I find that sometimes maybe Canadians, Americans look at this a little differently because of, the country you grew up in. But how would you look at the way you think that Bitcoiners should be working with governments or not working with governments or asking of governments?
Well, it's an interesting topic because a lot of Bitcoiners are often criticizing what we're doing because we engage with governments that's top down. We have two strategies, top down, bottom up. Bottom up is Aqua, getting the unbanked into a financial system. And then top down, we engage with governments, politicians, regulators. We even meet with central banks. But the question is, like, why do you want the governments to have Bitcoin? And I think it really comes down to what kind of world do we want to live in? There's a number of dimensions to this. One is in countries with abundant excess energy, they could be very wealthy countries. And Bhutan is a great example of that. They're just converting excess hydro into money. They are using that money to build a new airport, but it shows the promise of that. And for any energy-rich country, that is your path to prosperity. Much like in the UAE, like you don't pay taxes if you're an Emirati. The government gives you money. And that could be the case for like Canada, for example. But moreover, most governments need money. It's like a big machine that consumes money. Like today, the government in the US is shut down, right?
Yeah. You would notice it, but yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't notice it, but Bitcoin price is up, but maybe that's uncorrelated. But governments need money. And when they need money and there is no money, that's when they look to different ways of getting it, like wealth taxes, taxing unrealized capital gains, seizure of money for whatever reason from the citizens, or various other creative ways to take money from people. So I think if you can get a government to adopt Bitcoin, and if they have energy, even better, they can mine Bitcoin, then you kind of wean them off the wheel of taking money from people, for lack of a more eloquent way to put it. So that's one thing. The other thing is obviously we want to be protected. As Bitcoiners, we don't want our Bitcoin taken from us. We don't want to be blamed. And if you look back in history, there are many examples of, groups or ethnicities that are blamed for various problems, usually economic, right? Many, many examples in history. And I can see, like, if we are in a fourth turning and things do get bad, who do you blame? It is the Bitcoiners, because maybe we're okay. We're doing okay because we have Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the counter to that is really getting more Bitcoin adoption. And the government can encourage a lot of Bitcoin adoption. They can say Bitcoin is usable for payments, because most people don't want to go against the government, right? So if you can get the governments to embrace Bitcoin as money, more people will have Bitcoin. So if you think of it, you don't want a witch hunt. And how do you avoid or avert a witch hunt? You make more witches, right? More Bitcoiners.
Create witches in the government.
Yes, exactly. And also, I think if you get the government to understand Bitcoin, and there are a lot of Congress people and like people like RFK Jr. that understand it, it fixes itself. Bitcoin does change people's thinking and the way they view the world. And I think if you have enough of that and a critical mass of that, maybe it's possible to change government for the better. I don't really see any other way of doing that, because the nature of government is to take and redistribute at the fundamental core, right? Ideally, I don't know if you're for smaller government, but ideally it's just administrative.
Yeah.
Make sure the borders are safe and people can live safely. But then it always scope creeps into more and more and more things, more programs, more free things. And then it kind of spirals out of control and you have $37-8 trillion of debt.
Yeah.
So I think this is kind of the reason why you do want governments to embrace Bitcoin. Is not that we want to give the government lots of Bitcoin, but we want them to understand it, use it, have ways to get Bitcoin that is not taking it from people, and learn about Bitcoin and learn the ethos of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Saylor, his keynote yesterday, he said that he thinks everything really changed 12 months ago, and that's was the new administration that came in.
Yes.
We can see how the previous administration, what an alt universe we're into. If Kamala had won and kind of extended what the Biden regime had been doing, where that would have gone. But what Sailor's talking about is you sort of had basically everyone in the government was very hostile to Bitcoin and crypto.
Yes.
And as Frank, I did a fireside chat with Frank today on stage, and he said, something I say quite often was the government's not a monolith, though. It's a bunch of people in the government.
Yes.
But under the Biden administration, very few believed in Bitcoin or were invested in Bitcoin. And today's Trump administration, from Trump himself all the way down to the cabinet, they're all Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty big thing. What do you think about, though, like with the laws, right? So like, I think more of a constitutionalist where like the law should be preventing the government from infringing, back to having a small government.
Yes.
I think like in America we have the Second Amendment. So it's not that there's no policy of guns. The policy is don't infringe on my right to have guns.
Yes.
Right. So like I think of like I see some of the states, we've had 6 states put through rules that say a right to self-custody, a right to mining, right to open networks. But then at the same time, with new technology, if we look back like the telecom or in the internet days, there were rules put into place that protected the industry to allow it to grow.
Yeah.
And so a lot of rules that they put in place could hurt it as well. So how do you navigate that in this rapidly growing world?
Well, I think it has to do with the evolution of technology, right? Like when the Constitution was written and the amendments were passed, you didn't have central banks and government money predominant in the world.
But Jefferson was warning us about that.
Yes. But, when money is centralized and largely digital and very controllable, then a lot of those rights are no longer guaranteed, because if you have no ability to have your own money, like let's say the right to bear money, then can you have free speech, right? Can you actually, pay for your internet bill to post something? Can you bear arms if you cannot buy arms? Or if they like have a social credit score and they go, yeah, you can't have this now, right?
Something you can't pay to drive to the assembly, right?
Yeah.
It all hinges on payments.
Yeah. But it was kind of assumed that money would be bearer until suddenly it wasn't. And I think Bitcoin fixes a lot of this. And I think perhaps it was Trump's experience, being attacked by the other side that made him understand maybe a bearer asset is good. And you do see him piling into Bitcoin. Unfortunately, a bit too much in the crypto side, but nobody's perfect. But definitely it's on the right track that he is for bearer instruments. And I think this is kind of the way to fix that. But it's kind of sad that you have to pass laws for the right to having self-custody or other things like that, when it should be a given that you should be able to have money as a sovereign individual.
Yeah. What do you think about some of like these dragnet surveillance orders in today's day and age? You had mentioned earlier, like, for example, I go through the border, they open my phone. Now they can see my account passwords or they can see my private keys and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there are enough protections right now in this day and age, and at a global level especially, where it's the world is ready for money being information. So you missed my keynote after Sailor, but I was talking largely about the equation being changed now. Money is energy and information because Bitcoin is money. And this changes so many different things because money has never really been information before. And money has never been energy before, right? Like Henry Ford theorized it in 1921. He said, let's have an energy currency. But it wasn't until the dawn of Bitcoin that we actually had an energy money. But that means you need energy because energy is money. Like I gave the example before. If you have energy as a country, then guess what? You're a rich country and you have money. Yeah. But with Bitcoin, it changes it because it's not just oil in the ground or whatever. You could have nuclear reactors and have money too. But the information part is different because money as information means you can teleport money anywhere around the world. Capital controls no longer exist. And I believe right now we're seeing countries kind of grappling with that new reality. In Korea, they're trying to push for a Korean won stablecoin. Is that going to be only transactable in Korea and subject to the same limits, or is it free-flowing? If it's free-flowing, then you don't have capital controls anymore. And I think this is kind of where the battle is, like the internal conflict is. Do we have free money, or do we want controlled money and controlled economies? And to that extent, you need more protections too. Like I was saying, like when you cross the border, if someone can take your phone and take your information or look at your information, they can take your money. And how do you prevent that? Because, someone looked at it. How do you prove that they stole it? And like, ideally, as a Bitcoiner, if someone ever looked at your seed, treat it like it's gone.
Yeah.
Or if your device is compromised, then, move your funds immediately. But as we get more and more Bitcoin adoption, that learning curve is applied to, billions of people around the world. And I think you need some protections. And the protections really come down to more sovereignty, like making sure people are independent, reducing the surveillance state, right? Like what happens if a camera somewhere catches you with your seed phrase and the guy with the camera can, steal your funds? There's always that possibility. But the world we're going in is tilting more towards the surveillance side rather than to more freedoms. So this is an interesting point in time where we go, but definitely governments need to be cognizant of all these changes and, protect the people. At least you hope they will.